Hey, it's great to be here. Doctor, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And normally I would take the time to recognize all the important people in the audience, and you know you're all very, very important. But I am just thrilled to be here with 141 eCyber students from all over Florida. You are our future, and it is just absolutely wonderful that this conference, under your leadership, Doctor, has invited these students to participate, and I think it's fantastic that they have decided to come today. Let's give them a big round of applause. Well, any chance to get out of the building, that five-sided building, is a win for me, even if it does mean spending a day or two in Orlando. Tough choice, I suppose. I want to thank the Army Science Conference for inviting me to say a few remarks to you all. I'll make sure we leave some time for some questions at the end. I hear you have not been a very questioning group. That's not what I normally think about scientists, so I hope that you'll think of a question or two you can ask me here at the end. No doubt my comments will pale in comparison to those who have already spoken and will speak. From what I understand, this year's conference theme is centered on the harnessing of disruptive science and technology for the soldier. In this year's conference, you are exploring the leading edge of technologies such as autonomous systems, bio and nanotechnology, networks, quantum information science. If that's what you're talking about, maybe I should be sitting in the audience listening to you rather than you listening to me. We both probably learn a heck of a lot more. So instead of using the scientific method of observing, maybe doing an experiment or two, and then giving you a hypothesis to test out how-to of harnessing disruptive innovations, I will take an old soldier's approach and tell a story. But before I start, I have to say one thing. Let me thank you for all you are doing for our soldiers serving in harm's way, and for all you are doing for those who have been wounded. As one who has spent 2 years of my recent life in Iraq, I know the contribution you are making. You all make miracles happen. It is your dedication, your willingness to serve in a special way, many times at a fraction of what your peers make in private labs that have no military connections, that I find simply inspiring. I'm a words guy. You are all mostly numbers and hard science people, and quite frankly, I find you intimidating, but so essential to fighting this war. It is you that will always ensure the American soldier has the edge. It is you, your work, and your imagination that I find awe-inspiring. Please join me in giving you a applause for what you do. I really mean that. Now to the task at hand. As I understand the theory, disruptive innovations almost always appear initially as lesser performing products. They don't quite live up to expectations, but the potential, if cultivated, could be game-changing in nature. Yet it was Clayton Christensen, the Harvard Business School professor, who surmised in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma, the possibility that powerful forces of organizational inertia and bureaucracy resident in large companies like the Army can squash the disruptive innovation before it is ever given a chance to become a reality. That reminds me of 2 young majors up the road from D.C. who experienced firsthand the powerful forces of organizational resistance to an emerging, potentially disruptive innovation that could have radically changed the game if institutional antibodies had not kicked in. These 2 majors had commanded together, lived next door to each other. Their families spent time together. They became great friends. The first major was a flamboyant, confident, outspoken officer. The second major, normally calm and reserved, but hidden below the exterior, was a fierce sense of resolve. The units they commanded together were considered backwater endeavors of the United States Army. The first time they were employed during the global war, the technology they were using was considered marginal at best. The return on investment was considered nothing short of abysmal. Even the senior leadership of the Army during that year's Defense Authorization Act deliberations decided the investment in technology was not worth the price. The two majors had different ideas, though. They tinkered with the technology, literally and figuratively taking it apart and putting it back together again. Together they debated late into the evenings around the dinner table about the potential value of this technology to the future fight. Each decided it was their duty to contribute to the intellectual debate, and they decided to publish. The flamboyant, confident major published the first salvo in the branch journal by simply stating in powerful prose, "It is distinctively a new instrument to be added to the full chorus of the military band." The second, more reserved major published a more conservative article in the same branch journal about 5 months later. He wrote, and I quote, "Many officers are prone to denounce the technology as a freak development. They simply ignore it in their calculations and mental pictures of future battles. It is, in point of development, in its infancy, and the great strides already made in its improvements only point to greater improvements still to come." The two majors had created a buzz. They saw beyond the now into the realm of the possible and saw something amazing. The debate had been flamed. To comment here, this is what I would deem a disruptive innovation, one that had not yet proven itself. Yet in its initial development, the potential impact it could have on warfare could only be described as revolutionary, game-changing. The chief of the branch was a fellow named Major General Farnsworth, a true warfighter, earned the Silver Star and the Distinguished Service Cross. As you probably know, branch chiefs hold a lot of weight in the Army. Major General Farnsworth read through the branch journal and was intrigued by articles written by the two majors. So much so that he called a second major to his Washington, D.C. office for a quick chat. Well, that chat was more like a one-way conversation. As the major recalled, "I was told that my ideas were not only wrong but dangerous, and that henceforth I would keep them to myself. Particularly, I was not to publish anything incompatible with solid doctrine. If I did, I would be hauled before a court-martial." Court-martial. You can imagine the effect that such a statement could have on a young, impressionable mind. It is almost like having your rights read to you. And if you haven't had your rights read to you, it's a real experience. I have. Which brings you to what Clayton Christensen surmised as the basic truth of the inventor's dilemma. Incredible organizational forces can and will, in the interest of defending the establishment, seek to crush potential disruptive innovations that have not created value well before they ever get a chance. The two majors took their cue from Major General Farnsworth and toed the line. They swallowed the recommendation and put to rest, for the time, their seemingly breakthrough ideas. We'd call that scared straight. And the impact of being scared straight by well-meaning establishment literally delayed the advancement of this technology for a generation. These two majors, who lived next door to each other, were stationed at Fort Meade. The year was 1920. The global war was World War I. The seemingly disruptive innovation was the tank in its infancy. The two majors were dressed down by the Chief of Infantry branch, were, believe it or not, George Patton and Dwight David Eisenhower. As a result, it would be almost a decade later before someone seriously considered the revolutionary nature of the tank again. It wasn't until General Chaffee took up the mantle in 1927 by predicting that mechanized armies would dominate the next war. You know, the really amazing thing, if you read the story of these two majors, was they were able, back in the 1920s, to take one of these tanks and drive it to, borrow it from the motor pool, bring it to one of their backyards where they tore it apart piece by piece and put it back together again. I would not advise trying that in today's world. But it was General Chaffee, who is conventionally known as the father of the Tank Corps. We all know what happened in World War II. We all know what happened next. What if, just what if the ideas that Patton and Eisenhower envisioned in 1920 were given a leg to stand on? The United States would have had an additional 7 years development before the outbreak of World War II. The idea of disruptive innovations, game-changing ideas, and their potential is not new. It is whether we are willing and able to cultivate, harness, test, and explore the potential impacts of technology before it has reached a developmental maturity to actually make a difference. It is sort of ironic. During this week, the first week in December in 1913, the Ford Motor Company introduced the first vehicle assembly line. How disruptive was that? You ask any good cavalryman in 1913, there was nothing that would outdo a good horse. Even after World War I, there were concepts that envisioned trucks carrying horses to the front. Seems we just couldn't let go of the value of the horse as a weapon of war, just the same as we couldn't see the potential of the mechanized force. Defending what we know, not what is possible. The vision of two majors in 1920 could very well be the vision of some of you in the audience today. There are countless technologies and ideas emerging that are in the forming stage. That could quite possibly be the low end of the value curve, but with time and development could fundamentally change the way we do business. The trick from my perspective is how we keep ourselves from pulling a 21st century version of the Chief of Infantry move. How do we keep ourselves from unknowingly relegating the tank-like idea of 2008 or 2009 as not only wrong but dangerous, as Dwight David Eisenhower recalled from his conversation with the Chief of Infantry years later? We need perspective to not only find and cultivate the tank of the 21st century, but to keep our own corporate antibodies in check so we don't squash an idea unknowingly before it has a chance to prove itself. We need to put in the hands of our soldiers and watch the creativity and imagination of the Pattons and Eisenhowers take over. Some of the ideas coming out of the demands of war today are disruptive, as Christensen defines it, as the tank was during World War I. As I think about it, one idea I believe could be potentially game-changing is how the enabling capabilities of information technologies today should be forcing us to look at how organizations literally function. It is demanding we relook the first principles of command and control. Collaboration, as a rule, can empower the ideas, the knowledge, and decision of groups and organizations like never before. It can redefine how we can create tactical, operational, and strategic advantage, and taps into the fundamental truth that the strategic corporal is a reality. And what we do to empower that corporal will do more to create a comparative advantage today than anything I know. Tiger, the tactical ground reporting system, is a small example of the flattening quality of collaboration through leveraging the network. It is a virtual notebook with significant events, pictures, video, census data, infrastructure, personal observations, connected and geospatial in nature, where fellow patrol leaders can tap into the virtual notebooks of their peers to draw their own conclusions, building context, building awareness. It empowers our frontline leaders like never before. It taps into the creative capabilities of the American soldier. It arms the strategic corporal with what he needs, how he needs it, and when he needs it. Systems like Tiger are allowing us to move beyond the mantra that every soldier is a scout. Now every soldier is an intelligence asset, uniquely empowered by the connective tissue of the network to conduct their own intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Yet, as Stephen Ambrose stated of the Army's position toward Patton and Eisenhower in 1920, you can apply to the Army's position towards Tiger in 2007. Quote, "The Army was not pleased." Tiger has grown out of the experiences of soldiers in OIF-2 and was but an idea in 2004. A few enterprising soldiers took what they saw with systems like Command Post of the Future and asked DARPA for some help. It became so powerful to the soldiers on the streets of Iraq that it spread like a virus. 3 years after it was conceived, in spite of the defense mechanisms of our own POM process and the well-intentioned staff officers who thought they knew what the soldiers' needs really were, 15 brigade combat teams are using it in theater, and it is being fielded in Afghanistan today. It has literally trumped the conventional way we do business, turned command and control on its head. The Army could not see the potential game-changing nature of the system because we were too busy defending the already existing programs in place. Now, I know you can't fix the POM process, but I want you to know that I see it as an impediment to what you all do and getting what you do in the hands of the soldier. As we all know, we are all very comfortable defending the horse. I see the same potential today in some of the great work out there in self-correcting autonomous networks, where we are literally changing the game again by leveraging the research and development cycle of the commercial communications sector to create a cheaper, disposable, off-the-shelf, adapting networks that can connect an entire army. Now, I know you're all excited because you have internet access in here for the first time, but I can reach in my pocket and pull out an iPhone 3G, and last year I could have had internet access in here the entire time. This is amazing technology, and bringing it to the soldier in ways that are different from the iPhone or the 3G. And it's really amazing when you think what Apple has done, the harnessing of really an informational, not an industrial system in providing products. I mean, I bought my first iPhone 16 months ago, and 16 months later, it was obsolete. And quite frankly, I rushed to the store and stood in line with everyone else to get a 3G. Yet, as amazed as I am at the potential these technologies bring to the table, I'm equally amazed at how quick we are as an institution to shut down an idea in the interest of bureaucratic positioning, or defending the process rather than defending the idea. We see this in the systems-oriented planning, programming, budgeting, and execution cycle, or the POM cycle, for many of you here, that has become so ingrained in our institutional DNA that we can't see the innovative demands from the field that are outstripping the antiquated acquisition processes we have in place. Most of the ideas that have helped the soldiers in the field today in my 2 years in Iraq grew not out of the POM cycle, but grew out of work that you did, that we were able to rush to the field because we had supplementals. We used that supplemental money as seed corn to get those things to the field. When I think of work that was done with such things as Frag Kit 5, the interim Frag Kit 5, which was briefed to me in Iraq in February of 2006, I had my first 30 systems on up-armored Humvees and saw an immediate reduction in coalition casualties and saw those start streaming in at 300 to 400 a month after that. It's absolutely amazing. But innovations like that were all made possible because of supplementals and our ability to get at those. And so was Tiger. Tiger would not be where it is today if it wasn't for DARPA and their tremendous commitment to soldiers and our ability to harness supplementals. We see in the systems-oriented planning program budgeting cycle of the POM. The ideas being presented as part of the conference today could potentially be the tanks of the 21st century. Incredible advances in regenerative medicine, regrowing tissues and organs, literally using what you are learning to save soldiers in the fight. Bio-inspired and manipulated sensors and materials. Healing the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder through intensive technologies. Engrossing our soldiers in virtual scenario environments that involve all the senses. Exposing our soldiers before they are ever really there to the complex dilemmas they may encounter on the modern battlefields. Healing them when the effects of PTSD become overwhelming. Those of you who are doing work in this area, I cannot think of any greater work that we need today. When I look at the number of soldiers we have with PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and TBI, traumatic brain injury, the numbers stagger me. And when I go around to the different post camps and stations and see how they're being treated, it's a little different everywhere you go. And it's a little different everywhere you go, quite frankly, because we do not have the protocols. We are faced with disorders here that we've never seen in the numbers that we're seeing. And any research in this particular area, in those particular areas, will gain my attention and the attention of the leadership of the Army very, very rapidly, because we're all searching to see what we can do for soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who have these two problems. Pushing the boundaries of the network and neuroscience to redefine the operating environment that we will never really truly understand for years to come. Once the rudimentary forms of self-healing networks and mind communication evolve, I suspect we will see our approach to the very nature of operations change. These are potentially disrupting innovations that if we even put 1 ounce of creativity against, we may see the unbelievable potential they bring towards the way we do business. They may literally change the game. The fundamental balance to me as vice is not only serving our core business, but finding and harnessing new ideas that prevent blind spots from developing like they did in 1920. With the incredible rate of change that is impacting us all, the wars we are fighting today and we may fight tomorrow, there's no time to drag our feet defending the horse cavalry. Our soldiers, their families, and the American people demand it. Thank you again for allowing me to be part of today's events. As I said at the beginning of these remarks, you are making an incredible difference. You are an inspiration. I look forward to seeing the displays today, and with that, I would like to open up the floor to a few questions.